at least, I guess mule experts on Facebook, but a horse or a mule. Chattanooga, what we're trying to do with Chattanooga is we are trying to find this undiscovered layer of Chattanooga history through photos, paper ephemera, and different objects. And the main way that we're trying to do it, and the one reason why we're using social media, is to kind of connect with locals to crowdsource this information. So when I say undiscovered layer, I mean stuff that are in shoeboxes, old trunks, your attic. Everybody had an uncle who was taking photos all the time, might have left you a box, or your grandmother's chests, etc. So we're trying to encourage people to actually open up that information, open up that stuff, because there's actual history in there that's kind of forgotten. So that's what we're trying to do with Chattanooga as far as our main core focus.
Well, how are you making these contacts? How are these folks finding you, David Moon?
A lot of it has been through our displaying of photos. So, everybody seems to gravitate towards old photos. There are a lot of old photo projects out there, online, whether it's American history or such. So I think people just kind of gravitate to the stuff that we post. So then they become interested, and then they learn a little bit more about our project.
Well, how do you obtain these images? Are you given these boxes? Are you lent these boxes by mail now, shipping down to Ocala, Florida? Then you scan the images, promising to return them, and when you're done, you send them back, and you have digitized versions of, say, portraits and photographs?
Well, with crowdsourcing, we use the Chattanooga History Center. Has been great with that, because people can come and they can drop off their photos and other items, and they would actually scan them and catalog them. So people don't have to send it off to myself here in Florida, which is kind of a good thing, because people don't necessarily want to park their items for too long.
Right. Sending it off to strangers, maybe.
So they have a point. Yes, they have a local point of drop off. They're handled by somebody who has a master's degree in preservation, and her helpers. So, we really try to keep to a very kind of scientific approach when scanning and cataloging.
Well, it seems like with crowdsourcing, you're going to have an ever-increasing number of submissions. Will that burden the local history museum staff beyond what it can bear?
It kind of comes and goes. Sometimes, like right now, we've got a lot of activity. So sometimes stuff has to be put in the queue. They're always trying to catalog their stuff as well. So so far it's worked. So there hasn't been too much of a burden, or at least they haven't told me.
Now, a lot of the pictures on picnooga.com are buildings and sort of scenes of geography with the distant Lookout Mountain, warehouses, factories, grain silo facilities, and the like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll say something about some of the ones that have drawn your special notice, David.
A lot of people ask me what my favorite thing is, and it's usually the latest thing that came in. I'm kind of a generalist when it comes to Chattanooga history. I like it all. I like the photos of the old buildings, et cetera, and I think a lot of other people like that too. But, I also kind of like the more human side of Chattanooga and portraits and pictures of people and such. Because I think it's a little bit more rare. It's a little bit more personal, because those things are usually coming out of people's attics and people's shoe boxes, opposed to, large collections like the Heiner collection or the Steinberg collection.
We'll say something about who are the Steiners and what did they collect?
The Heiners. He collected quite a lot of stuff as far as some of the more famous families in Chattanooga. Also buildings and such. He wrote 3 books, I believe, in the 50s and 60s on Chattanooga history, and he's kind of the godfather of Chattanooga history. So a lot of his stuff is more infrastructure stuff. streetcars and stuff like that. Steinberg, who recently, in the last few years, donated his collection, was all Chattanooga transportation. And there's a large amount of that. That has not been digitized as far as I know. The Chattanooga Library has that. And I know the Chapin collection, which again was kind of a general collection of stuff, I believe started the collection there at the library, if I'm not mistaken. So there's lots of stuff that's more infrastructure, opposed to more personal photos or people on the street.
Is there a way my listener, David Moon, my listener who has teenage children, could have these young people involve themselves in some effort to digitize these works? Is there a program where patrons of the public library, which my listener's family is or are, could help in this work if there's a need for, if there's a queue, as you say, at the museum and also at the library? It seems that hands would be desirable to help digitize some of these works, to scan them, name them, and so on.
I know that the Chattanooga History Center has, limited space, and they do have volunteers always coming up. So it's pretty active. I can't say much about the library and what their plans are. I'm not so connected with them as far as digitizing. I mean, currently, and that's something that we're trying to figure out this year, is to try to help more with getting this stuff digitized and online. And, that's why we're kind of trying to partner up, like the UTC Library is a new partner. And, of course, they have lots of students at their disposal, and they have a brand new center where they have new scanners and photography equipment and a book scanner, which is quite nice. So I don't know if there's any efforts right now where anybody could help, probably in the future. But it is something that I think everybody is looking at in the future, because really digitizing collections is something that a lot of people are doing right now. It's just not in Chattanooga.
Well, tell us about Sam Hall and deepzoomchattanooga.com, where there are photographs on that website by this local man that have tremendous detail. Talk about his work and yours.
Sam is a good friend. He started about the same time I did, and we at first thought maybe we'd be rivals, but as we talked, we had a lot in common. Sam's goals are to really find more higher quality images and negatives, so you can get that kind of deep zoomability of the photos that he has. So he's very particular about that, opposed to, say, like an 8x10 glossy that's only going to have a certain resolution. It's only going to have the resolution of that print. So most of the stuff that he features on his site is from an original source, either original negative or glass plate negative. And he does a real nice job with that. I think a lot of people ask me about it, which is great. And it's a good thing.
Well, I'm looking on his website at a colorized aerial photograph of downtown with the train department, the train yard, and all kinds of things which are now gone. And it's really remarkable to connect with them. And so he tries to use large format camera negatives, you say, and glass plates.
Correct.
Say something about the quality that is contained in these large negatives. How big are these negatives, and what is the power, you might say, the power to reveal detail in them?
As far as the negatives go, I mean, they could be as small as 4x4 or 5x7. It's not necessarily that they're large per se. I mean, some of them get to be pretty large, and I'm not sure exactly how large he's dealing with some of the earlier ones. But you can get a lot of, because they're at the negative level, you can get a lot of detail. I mean, when people create a negative, and of course, we've all taken a lot of us have taken pictures with film. Usually the negatives fell to the bottom of the box, and eventually you threw them all out. All we really cared about was the prints. And the prints only hold so much resolution opposed to the negative. So when you do have that original source, I mean, it's almost like a digital camera today, as far as megapixels go. Even cameras all the way back then to, around the 1900s. So you do still have that, as long as the photographer was good at this craft, you still have that very crisp image and high resolution. So obviously, with today's technology, you can yield a better image.
And glass negatives are they are the first kinds of means of capturing images. Is that right in photography?
I don't know if I don't know if they were the first type, but they were a very early type. Yes. I mean, they're basically a glass plate, as I understand. It's treated with chemicals. You expose it to light in the camera, behind the lens for a few seconds. You would cover the lens, and then you would treat it with more chemicals, and then the image would appear, and then you can make prints from a print enlarger from there.
Well, the battlefield dead photographs from the war to prevent Southern independence that I've made note of are glass negatives or glass plates.
Correct.
So you're now in Ocala, and you're working. Why do you still care about Chattanooga if your horizons have changed, your purposes have changed, you have another home, there's another place that's sort of in your heart than Chattanooga? Why do you persist in caring about Chattanooga?
I asked myself that too, and a lot of people ask me that. I don't know if I have an answer for it. I just think that I think when you see a problem like I did, and it's not necessarily that Chattanooga don't care about history or it's not available. I mean, there's a lot of great books that are being written even today about Chattanooga history, but to actually have kind of a real-time source and using social media to project that and get people excited about history, which hopefully that's what Chattanooga does, or even feel a little nostalgic, was something that just wasn't there. So I kind of saw a need. I have some marketing skills. I've had social media skills from past projects. That it was a natural fit, and I love history. So really kind of drawing it all together just seems natural.
My listener and I, David Moon, have a problem. We are sort of cosmopolites. We watch television. We care about events of the world. We are we speak kind of a common tongue. We don't have vernacular of our part of the world anymore. We're kind of generalized by CBS, NBC, ABC, Walter Cronkite on up to the Today Show. We don't really identify with place anymore. There's been as some of the Southern novelists are trying to suggest that we lack a kind of a here in our souls. Is that a problem that you're trying to address, or is that something that's just sort of theoretical and not something that you in the crowdsourcing and image publishing business care about?
I don't know if I directly addressed it, but it's obviously an effect. I mean, at first it was a matter of just showing some cool photos, and then I realized that really it was a project that was almost public relations and educational, kind of put together, and putting some pride back into local history. Because I mean, as far as Chattanooga history goes, I mean, when they were promoting Chattanooga back in the day, history was always number one over commercial endeavors and even the kind of the scenic naturalness of Chattanooga. Somehow that kind of fell off.
I don't quite understand what you're saying.
Their brand.
I don't catch. What are you saying? I don't catch that. David, I didn't quite understand what you meant. That history was always number one, but it has fallen off. For whom was history number one in your reference there?
For Chattanooga. If you look at old brochures and marketing material for Chattanooga all the way up to about the 60s, history, because of the battlefield. Now, of course, it's Civil War history that we're talking about, but history was part of the Chattanooga brand. And I think that that's kind of taken a very backseat, a rumble seat, if you will, to what Chattanooga is trying to project today.
Well, now the marketing of the city, of course, is forward directed. It's gig oriented. It's environmentally sound. It's trying to draw entrepreneurial classes from other parts of the country to move here to take advantage of a kind of favorable local economy. And so it's not. You're right. It doesn't connect with history anymore.
But Chattanooga was always that way. Again, there was three things. There was history, there was industrial, which of course has fallen off the map, for good and bad, at least for the environment. And then there was the natural. So really, if you kind of replace what they're trying to push is innovation with industry, and trying to get people to come to Chattanooga, because Chattanooga had, they were trying to get industries to come to Chattanooga also because of the Chickamauga Dam and the power. So replace that with innovation, and you still have the scenic and natural. History has, again, taken a rumble seat, if you will, as far as Chattanooga's brand. And I don't think it needs to necessarily. I think it's very valuable.
What's coming up on your publication schedule, David Moon of picknooga.com? What's next?
Well, we actually, yesterday, we got confirmation that there's about 50 more glass plate negatives, which brings it up to maybe 120, 130, which is a good thing, because that makes quite a collection. I mean, there's stuff happening all the time. That's kind of the big project right now. Trying to turn this into an organization is something else, because this is basically, it's not a nonprofit. I think formalizing it into a nonprofit and setting some goals is probably going to be up in the future. I think I talked about direct acquisition, which is actually purchasing items, and that's mostly for stuff that has kind of gotten away from Chattanooga, like these glass plate negatives, although we do that kind of on a limited basis now. That's also in the future to kind of increase that a bit, but of course you need funding for that.
Right. So if you had a nonprofit group, as opposed to just being David Moon and your pal Sam Hall, you would have an organization, you would have collaborators, you would have people who are willing to write some checks and willing to help organize their friends to write checks as well, to make this a more formal online effort.
Exactly. And there is, it's not just Sam and I. We're kind of at the forefront as far as the public facing, but, there are probably about 10 people who really care about this project that contribute on an ongoing basis. So, there is kind of a layer of people who really do care and do support. And of course, a lot of the people who follow Picknooga also kind of help.
Now, my listener David can call my listener can call David Moon at 972-0209. That's 972-0209. He runs picknooga.com. And if you have something that would be of interest to him, please contact him. The site again is picknooga.com. David, thanks for joining my listener and me here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Thank you very much, David.
Thanks.